as we were trying to put together our radio program this morning, of course, we have this conference call every morning, which involves calling into one of those free conference call lines. And because I have T-Mobile and Louise has T-Mobile, you get this message that says, the number you've called is not in your plan. You will be charged a penny a minute. You may hang up now if you don't want to be charged. But then after I didn't hang up and I connect to the conference call thing, and it says dial in your number, and I dial in a 6-digit number, and it says you only dialed in 4 digits. It's like it doesn't work. And one way around it that we had figured out was, okay, I'll dial into the conference call, and then I'll call Louise, and I'll merge the calls. T-Mobile has apparently blocked that because we tried that all morning, and that didn't work. It's bizarre. It's just bizarre how T-Mobile is just trying to squeeze a few of their customers, presumably because it's so few people who use these kind of services. And in the midst of this now, you've got AT&T. The headline over at the Daily Beast, AT&T is spying on Americans for profit. Kenneth Lipp is supposed to be a guest with us on this topic right now, I believe. I don't know if... Pardon? Oh, Chris is calling him right now. Okay. Oh, there he is. Kenneth Lipp, a writer, activist, and researcher, contributor to the Daily Beast, the website thedailybeast.com. You can tweet him at Kenneth Lipp. Or at the Daily Beast, Lipp, L-I-P-P. Kenneth, welcome.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us. I was just complaining about my experiences with T-Mobile, that we have this unlimited data, unlimited call plan, but whenever I try to call into the free conference call line, they say, you're going to have to pay a penny a minute for this. And then for some reason, it's a poor enough service, apparently because I have to go through their we're going to charge you service, that the conference call doesn't recognize my tones anymore since they changed. It's bizarre. It's just bizarre. So I'm having problems with T-Mobile. You're looking at what's going on with AT&T. Tell us what the story is here with this.
Right, and if you don't mind me just clarifying it first, just from the intro, I don't consider myself an activist in any capacity, really.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to do both, I think. So what's going on with AT&T is, first of all, largely because AT&T has the longest and most refined pedigree. It owns all the infrastructure, most of the old baby bells. It has been collecting metadata of every communication that has gone through that infrastructure, some of it for over 2 decades, since 1987. So the company has long been cooperating with intelligence agencies like the NSA, when they allowed the agency to install a listening device right into their internet exchange point in San Francisco in 2003.
Yeah, which was quite a scandal. It took a couple of years for that to come out, though, didn't it?
Right. It wasn't until 2006 when the AT&T technician Mark Klein testified before a federal judge.
Blew the whistle on it, yeah.
So it is interesting, and I usually don't open up intro to the topic this way, but it is about 2006 when Mark Klein testified before a judge, and then the New York Times reported on something called communities of interest, which have some similarities to the stories I wrote about, which is Hemisphere. In 2007, what the New York Times revealed was that the FBI had been going to AT&T and requesting this information called communities of interest, wasn't just data about the person that the FBI was asking about. They would get data about everybody that this person talks to and then every person that those people talk to. So 2 generations of connections was a community of interest. Right. They found out they were getting those through national security letters in 2007. And that seems to be about when they started Hemisphere.
Now, a national security letter is something that the FBI issues that does not require a court or a warrant, but has the effect of a warrant in that it demands information. Do I have that right?
Right. So you look at all these things like subpoenas. Everything that's not a warrant falls into this category called investigative demands. And if the company doesn't want to give it to the government, then they have to go to court and challenge it.
Right. Okay. So back to your story. Pardon my interruption.
2007. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said back to your story. Pardon my interruption.
So 2007 is definitely when Hemisphere was started. And it was first reported, though, about 6 years later by the New York Times. And they reported it as a cooperation between AT&T and the high-intensity drug trafficking areas. So what it looks more like is a product that AT&T has spent most of the last decade developing through. It started with a fraud detection software when people still paid for long distance and would try and rip the company off on those charges. And then they have monetized it under their obligations under CALIA, that the law that means that they have to give this information up to the police. They are going to police with not just this call detail records of a suspect or those that are provided through an investigative demand or an administrative subpoena. They are giving police new numbers of people to investigate, and at the same time, they are searching the call data of every AT&T customer, millions of innocent people.
Wow. So, and this program is referred to as Project Hemisphere. This is ongoing. Now, in my, much smaller complaints about T-Mobile's service, which I believe is a violation of the terms of service, of the agreement that I have with them, which was unlimited calls. I filed a complaint with the FCC. It's really easy to do. You go over to fcc.gov, click File a Complaint. I filled it in. I got a report back that my complaint had been filed, that T-Mobile has 30 days to respond. Is this the sort of thing that people can complain about over at the FCC, or is this like something that's going to require congressional action, or is this something that's entirely reasonable and appropriate?
Wow. So, those are all great questions, and it's kind of unclear. I'm definitely not a lawyer. I encourage people to complain to the FCC and to the SEC, and for shareholders of AT&T that have a problem with it to file for transparency measures, as many have done. And I'm trying to remember the name of the management company. It's the capital company is Arjuna Management, but there's a famous like musician manager, and it's not I'm a Lou, but it's one of those guys that is they're battling with AT&T because those shareholders want to know more about how AT&T is cooperating above and beyond the exact prescription of law. So it's the problem is really not that they are giving up data, which they have to be giving. It's that they are going out of their way to provide data, and that they're being so disingenuous about what they're doing,
and that they're making a buck doing it.
Right, and this is this big data world, high technology. There are costs, added costs to providing data sometimes. And one of the things is that once the government finds out about the creation of these pools of data and a company gives them to them, then the government is entitled to them anytime they come back and ask for them again. But companies don't have to create these things in the first place.
Right.
And there's really serious questions about how AT&T has responded. I think there are ways that somebody who wanted to be generous could interpret their statement as literally true. But I don't think it makes it any better.
That statement being that they started this as an internal, essentially fraud against long-distance fraud investigation, and it turned into this?
Well, so and I'm sorry, I have a tendency to kind of speed through things without explaining all of them. But the fraud detection is how they developed the basic software. It's something called Hancock. It's a programming language that is it's specifically for doing massive metadata surveillance and doing it from a data stream, from active live data, not just historical.
Right.
So once they didn't need it for doing long distance fraud anymore, they realized that they already had all of this index data built up from doing the communities of interest. Now, this is not what AT&T said, by the way. Some of this is my assumption and my describing sort of how this happened. Right. What AT&T says is that they only comply, or they just comply with legal orders like any other provider does. They say that there's no special database, and that the only thing that they're paid for, it's not for data, it is for having dedicated personnel to receive and process the request.
Right. Which seems not unreasonable, but at the same time, it essentially makes them a government contractor, doesn't it?
They are definitely a government contractor. The documents we found, there's a statement of work. It's a signed contract.
Right.
It's incredibly disingenuous, and there are some ways to question that statement. There is a line from this statement of work that says that in addition to all of these kinds of analysis and these intelligence products they're going to hand back, they are also going to, quote, store CDRs, call detail records, for deconfliction purposes.
Right.
So that leads one to believe there is a special database. I mean,
Right. Right.
But AT&T, they wouldn't answer any more of my questions, and the statement they gave me has been the one they sent to any other press outlet.
We're talking with Kenneth Lipp. He is the author of a new piece over at the Daily Beast, thedailybeast.com. It's titled AT&T is Spying on Americans for Profit, New Documents Reveal. And then the subtitle, The Telecom Giant is Doing NSA-style Work for Law Enforcement Without a Warrant and Earning Millions of Dollars a Year from taxpayers. Kenneth, what does this... We're looking at AT&T now trying to merge with Time Warner and become, one of the nation's largest ISPs and content providers. And apparently they've got all this information on their customers now that they're compiling. Is there something we should be concerned about here? Is this consequential?
I mean, yes. The amount of data that everybody volunteers to the internet and to the companies that they pay to communicate and to be entertained is something we should definitely be aware of. And I don't need to be preaching anybody about it because I am just as bad. But, I'm not a financial guru. I think that the merger with Time Warner is an issue that involves an awful lot of trust. It involves trust that these regulatory requirements that are in place, like that the consumers aren't required to pay more because of a merger, those kind of things. First of all, the evidence is not there that that anything that the SEC does to require divestitures works to save the consumers any kind of cost. And I don't think that AT&T has demonstrated trustworthiness. I mean, I think that's really the key issue for me, not being an economist.
Right, and perhaps should be for regulators. Kenneth Lipp, it's a fascinating article. I commend people to it. It's over at thedailybeast.com. AT&T is spying on Americans for profit. Kenneth, thanks for dropping by today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great talking with you. We'll be back.